Hi, everyone, and welcome to How I See, the Leica podcast. I'm your host, Louise Goldstone, and it's a pleasure to be joined by Greta Rico here at the Leica headquarters in Wetzlar, Germany. Welcome, Greta. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Louise. I am very excited about the conversation we're about to have.
Oh, can't wait. Just firstly, I wanted to start with asking you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I am a Mexican photographer who also considers herself a visual artist, a journalist, but also an educator.
What I think is really beautiful about your work and also poignant and important is the storytelling aspect. I know it's something that we talk about a lot in photography. How did visual storytelling come together with activism for you?
That's a very interesting question. You know, I actually started in photography just a few years ago. I do not have like a super long and career so far. And one of the things that made me realize that I wanted to become a photographer, but especially a documentary photographer with long-term projects and in-deep research of the topics that I like to talk about, was the possibility of doing something with my work in order to educate people and in order to start building different realities for certain populations in Mexico and also outside my country. So I was very sure that I wanted to use my work in order to build bridges with the people that is actually showing in my pictures and the collaborators that I'm working with, and also how I've been also wondering all the time, how can I make connections between not only the people who is showing in my pictures, but also certain audiences in certain spaces. So that is definitely a winning mix with my work and something that motivates me and push me a lot in terms of how can I do things differently. Because one of the things that I also teach always when I'm doing workshops or conferences or talks is that I always tell other photographers, especially young photographers or women photographers, that we've been, we as photographers, when we are learning photography, we are learning also a lot of fictions. And we are also learning things that are not true. And one of the things that especially male photographers have been telling the photography industry is that one photograph can change the world. And that is a lie. Because the photography itself will not change the world. And a proof of that is that we have tons of thousands of photography about wars, about hunger, about poverty. The war, the hunger, and the poverty are still there. So our pictures by itself are not doing anything. The ones that need to do something with that work is us as photographers. So the question is always, how can you push your work a little bit, like one step closer to start changing things, by start changing mindsets, by making people start asking questions on, I mean, is this a world that I want to live in? Is this the reality that I want to be in? What can I do in order to change things? Who can I support? Who can I like build a bridge? What is like another space where I can take my work in order to start like pushing things to start moving, you know? So that is something that I'm always asking myself. And I also try to have this dialogue with my collaborators, with the people that are showing in my pictures. What else can we do with the work that we are already doing and the collaboration that we are already having, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you talk about coming to photography a little bit later. Where did cameras and photography kind of start from you? I mean, maybe obviously you were aware before, you know, starting as a photographer yourself, but what was that starting point and then moving into taking photographs?
This is also always a very interesting question because I actually started doing photographs when I was 8 because my mom gave me my first camera at that age. And I do remember like my younger brother is, well, I'm actually 8 years older than him.
Okay, yeah.
So I do remember like walking around the house, following him, like document, now he's walking, now he's eating by himself, like being amazed of watching him growing. And I mean, I've always had a camera with me all the time since I was 8. I remember, for example, when I was in high school, I was going on vacations with my camera with me. When I was in university, I started traveling by myself, and I always had a camera with me. And then I actually studied international relations in the National Public University in Mexico, and my thesis work was about photojournalism and how photojournalism can actually push like the foreign policy of some countries in terms of the type of photography that is, that is published in international media. So photography was always there.
Yeah.
And I was always like having this love in the distance relationship with photography. And then I started doing journalism. But an interesting thing is that I started doing cultural journalism. So I was covering, for example, theater, music festivals, movie festivals. And then at some point, but I was a written journalist.
Yeah.
So at some point, I started delivering my pieces also with my pictures.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, I started questioning myself, like, I mean, photography has been always there. It has been your passion since forever. So why not like deciding to just be a photographer?
Bring them together.
And that's what I did. I decided that I wanted to be a documentary photographer, that I wanted to do long-term projects, in-deep research, like making myself a specialist of the topics that I'm researching. And I started almost 8 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it was leading on to my next question, which is when did you start taking photographs? But what was that sort of first project that you did where you were acting as a photojournalist and it wasn't a travel moment or a hobby and a passion, it was for work?
Yeah. My first project is called Urban Midwives, and it's a story about the midwives that still give attention in Mexico City. And in Mexico City is the second biggest in Latin America, but also a very modern urban city where, for example, it's super different like here in Europe. Midwives in Mexico and also in some of Latin American countries are considered as something that is supposed to be only in places where there are no hospitals, and only, for example, for indigenous communities. Midwifery is seen as this from a very colonial perspective, where you are supposed to have a midwife only very far in the mountains where women are not able to go to a hospital. But in reality, some of my findings by doing this project with midwives in the city is that historically, midwives are the ones who actually know and understand women's bodies.
Yeah.
Since we start with our period until menopause. They are the experts on women's health, on women's bodies, on women's processes. So they, by being with the women since forever, they understand, for example, the process of giving birth.
Yeah.
On the contrary, at least in Mexican hospitals, the rates of obstetric violence, but also the rates of C-sections are super worrying, and they are beyond the recommendations of the WHO.
Yeah.
By doing this visual research, I started systematizing my findings, and I started using this project as an educational tool in order to inform women about their reproductive rights, in order to talk publicly about obstetric violence, but also to be very straightforward in terms of how can women start supporting more the work of midwives.
Yeah.
You know, I also wanted to raise the conversation in terms of how can we support midwives. We need to back midwives in Mexico because they are being haunted by by health institutions in Mexico.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like a very interesting but also beautiful project that lasted 5 years.
Yeah, wow.
And we had a lot of exhibitions in different states of the country with the educational tour, doing conferences, doing workshops, doing talks with the women who are also in the pictures, and with the midwives, of course.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because it's such an important story to tell, such beautiful photographs, and actually very intense photographs as well. It sort of covers that whole spectrum of photography in this one series, and we can talk a little bit about that later as well. What I wanted to ask you is, how did growing up in Mexico impact the stories that you want to document?
I think it impacted in terms of realizing that my country can be a very dangerous place for women. And also realizing that gender violence is a reality. And growing up in a country where you feel it in your body all the time. Whenever you're out on the street, whenever you go to university, when you realize you have less opportunities than a man, when you realize that the gender gap, the salary gap, the professional gap, you know, that you have to be fighting all the time and telling the world that you're that you're worthy and that you have a value as a woman has been very important in my work, because some of the objectives that I have with the work that I do, not only as a photographer, but also as a women's activist, is to raise awareness that we deserve to have a value in the Mexican society. So it has been very determined for me. But also, at least in the last few years, it has also determined the way I want to tell stories. Because I've been convincing myself that even though this is the brutal reality that we are facing every day, we are not only victims, and we also deserve to have hope, and we also deserve to believe in the collective action of women, the collective action of the society, and how can we include the society in this conversation so our conditions can improve.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to, what are you trying to say with your photographs? There's two sides to that: positive action and also identifying issues and stories that need to be told. I wanted to ask you a bit about your series Substitute Mother. You spoke about your experience just then in terms of being a woman, issues around having dangerous elements to the way you have to lead your life, just being female. And it was the Substitute Mother series was the recipient of the Leica Women Photo Project Award. Could you tell me a little bit about the series and also why it was important for you to document it?
Yes, of course. I actually started Substitute Mother in 2017.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
In November of that year, when my cousin Fernanda was a victim of feminicide in Mexico. She was a victim of gender violence. So just so you can get an idea, nowadays 10 women are murdered daily in Mexico because of gender violence. And whenever that happened, she was a mom. So she was a mother of Nicole. Nicole at that time had only 3 years old. And my niece Nicole got orphaned because of this situation. So when we were in the funeral, like the whole family started debating who is going to take care of Nicole, who is going to be raising this little girl. So at that time, at that moment, my other cousin, Fernanda's sister, whose name is Xiomara, decided that she was going to take care of Nicole. So at that moment, Xiomara became a substitute mother. She was not a mom. we were raised together. She's like my sister. And the only women in the family, I mean, I come from a Mexican family where it is still nowadays in Mexico, you are supposed to have a family. You are supposed to, get married, have children, like do like this traditional family thing. And Xiomara and I were the only women in our family who have decided that we didn't want it to be mothers. We didn't want any children. So whenever this happened, it shocked me a lot that she actually took this decision. And in the past years, we've been talking a lot on what made her take this decision. And one of the things that I'm always talking about when I talk about this project is that some women in Mexico are being forced to be mothers, not only because they don't have the right to have an abortion, but also because of gender violence. Yeah. Because you do not have an option. Because who's going to take care of that kid? Who's going to take care of those children? Yeah. So in 98% of the cases, it's a woman in the family. It's either their grandmother, the sister, the cousin, but it's a woman in the family. So that's how this series started, with the story of my own family and with the possibility for me to tell a story on how this situation is impacting on women's lives as caregivers, but also in orphan children due to feminicide. Yeah. So another reality that I've been documenting with this long-term project is that these children are facing a lot of trauma, as well as the women. So how can you start a new life in a new family with all this emotional, psychological, economical problems? Because like just at the sudden you just became a mom, so what are you supposed to do with that little person who needs to be taken care of? She needs to go to school, she needs to go to therapy. When she gets sick, what do you do? And without any support from the government, because that's one of the main situations that I want to raise awareness with this project, is that there is no support from the Mexican government to these families, even though the government and the state is responsible for this violence to keep going. So I started the project with this chapter, Substitute Mother, which is the first chapter of the project. And thanks to the Leica Women for a Project and also other grants that I've received in the past years, I was able to start the second chapter that is called Care in the Absence, where I'm working with other families in other states of Mexico.
It's so fascinating. What you mentioned before was an education side of things. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that, why your work in education has also been important as part of your photographic journey.
Yes, all the time, because for several reasons. One of the reasons is that I truly believe that even though we live in a world where internet has made us believe that all the images that we were able to see have been made already, I still believe that we as storytellers and we as photographers and artists can still have the power to tell the stories in a different way, especially if you're a woman, because I also believe that the story has been told, sometimes, especially the story regarding women has been told in a very fiction way. Yeah. Only from the male perspective and from the male gaze. So, and also something that we believe, some of us as women artists, but also as feminist artists, do believe that the history has been, that just half of the history has been told. Yeah. Because the other half is the history that we need to tell, that we need to document, and that work are still in construction, because we are still doing this work by realizing that something was missing.
Yeah, absolutely. Were you always interested in female stories and storytelling? Was that always something that you were drawn to?
Yes. Yes, since the beginning, I realized that I wanted to tell stories about women, but also because one of the things that I started realizing when I was looking at pictures, when I was looking at images in general, not only photography, but also paintings, but also movies, but also television and literature, I mean, all the arts, I realized that I was not related to the fiction and to the representation that that history has made of women. Because when I see a movie, when I see the television, or when I go to the museums and see the paintings and the sculptures, the women that I see represented there is not the women that I am. And it's not the women that are around me, you know?
Yeah.
So I started like believing very, very strongly that I wanted to create different representations so other women can actually look at my work and see like, now I feel represented in those pictures. Now I feel I resonate with this story and with this work, because this is a different reality from the rest of the images that I see every day, you know?
Yeah. I guess that kind of leads into, what do you hope to achieve with your photography, from image to writing and that whole coming together? What do you hope for the viewer? I know you mentioned there's an element of education, also physical education, as in going and teaching people. But yeah, what do you want to achieve?
You know, I always like to share about my work that every time that I start a new project, I go to the field. I mean, even though I've read so many books about the topic, even though I've made so many interviews with experts and academics and, you know, like this people in power about certain topics, once I get in the field with real people, I'm always very ignorant. And I'm always very open to learn from them. And I'm always very open to realize that I do not have all the answers, that I am not someone like, I'm not a goddess with like a superpower of coming with my camera and just do miracles. I come with a very humble attitude in terms of being very open to learn from them, to listen their stories from them, to be very also empathetic with their reality, with their situation, and also to have a dialogue with them. I never, ever refer to the people that I'm working with as subjects, because I also believe that this is a very Western like conception of the people who we work with, because I never treat them as inferiors. They are my collaborators, and this is a very horizontal way of method of working that I truly believe is part of my personal politics in the work that I do. And I talk to them a lot, and I even ask them, what is the story that you want to tell? How would you like to be represented in my pictures? Because again, I'm not like a super powerful woman, like this genius that comes and do magic. I don't believe in that. I know that that's the way, again, men have taught us to do photography, and that's not the way that I want to work, and that's not the way that I want to be remembered, and that's not the legacy that I want to build with my work and with the projects that I work.
Yeah, absolutely. Your work has a strong focus on Latin America and Mexico. Do you find that your work also speaks to a global audience, and talking about what you want to achieve? Is that also an amazing moment to be able to reach out as well?
Yes. Actually, I mean, I've done stories outside of Mexico, like only stories for the media, but my projects, my long-term projects are only in Mexico, because I also believe that you do not need to go to the other part of the world to find the story. You know, I'm one of those photographers who believe that I have the stories here. And also working in long-term photography or photography projects as a brown woman coming from a country, from a poor Latin American country like Mexico, I do not have a lot of money to go around the world and take pictures. So I realized that the only way that I can do to tell the stories that I wanted to tell, but also in a very honest way, because I know the reality and I know the context was in my own country. So I mean, I started working very locally, and my intention is to stay there. I mean, I do love traveling for collaborations with NGOs, and also traveling for a specific story. But in terms of my long terms, I'm planning to stay home, and I'm planning to stay in Mexico, because I know that there's, and also because the history of photography has also teaches the people and the women who live in the third world that the representations, again, are not the ones that we want to have. So I'm also very convinced that I have the opportunity to create new representations on how the story has been told from the Western gaze, and also from the white male gaze who have come to our countries and to our context to tell a completely different story from the reality that we live.
Yeah. Could you tell me a little bit more about the work you do with organizations such as the Advisory Committee of Women Photograph and Diversify Photo?
Yeah, well, I'm very, very happy and honored to belong to these organizations, and specifically in Women Photograph. I truly believe that the work that Daniela has been done for women all around the world has been amazing, and a lot of work to create this directory so editors and organizations around the world can start looking to hire more women photographers in the industry. So just to share an anecdote, I don't know if you or the audience know how Women Photograph started, but actually what happened was that Daniela was in a photography festival in a portfolio review, and she asked an editor, "Hey, I've noticed that you barely hire women photographers, so you should be hiring more women photographers. You should be giving us more work, because we also have a voice, and we also have a lot of important and interesting stories to tell." So the editor answered her that, you know what? The thing is that I do not normally hire women photographers because I do not know where they are. I don't know how to find them. So she was like, okay, so if you do not know how to find them, I will create an a world directory, so you can go in the platform and look for the country that you want to hire someone, and you can find a women photographer there in the city that you need the story. So I think it was like a very simple initiative that has had a massive impact in the photography industry, because this is a way to tell them this is not an excuse. You can no longer give us the excuse that you do not know how to find us, because here we are. We've been here all the time. The reality is that this is a matter of having the willingness to include us in the photography industry, you know, because we are everywhere. I mean, now in times of internet, you're not finding them because you're just not looking. So this was also like a political statement, you know? And also in Diversify, I also love about this community that this is not only about women, but also another diversity in the photography industry, which is, for example, brown people or indigenous people or people coming from different populations or different vulnerable communities. So this is also a very great opportunity and another great platform for us to show our work and to be also in another directory where editors, organizations, or editorial people can find the work that we are doing in our local communities.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. I think it's great, and everyone should check those organizations out. Your work crosses the subjects of gender, environment, climate change, food production. As you study these areas more, do you find they are interconnected more and more?
Yes, definitely. And also because like the biggest intersection in these topics is actually the care work done by women historically. So in all of my projects, I'm always like focusing on what women are doing and what women are not doing because they are doing care work. So the reality is that all around the world, women we are getting more and more poor on time because we are dedicating ourselves to care work in terms of being guardians of the seeds, for example, in the countryside as small farmers, because we are working as midwives, for example, or because we are actually the ones who are having children, because we are mothers, and being a mom is like a second job, full-time job, 24/7, because you come from the office and then you need to take care of the children, and you need to cook, and you need to clean, and you need to wash the clothes, and you need, it's like we are always doing so much work that it's not paid, that it's being shown as love, for example, especially in Latin American societies. We are taught that you're supposed to care for others because you love them, because this is a matter of how much you love them. And in those cultural different realities, we've been losing liberty. We've been losing economic independence. We've been losing free time to do our hobbies. And we also been losing time for being an artist, for being the professionals that we want to be, the way we want to do it, because we are caring for other people, either children, elderly people, people with disabilities. Like we can name a lot of different situations where we are always caring for someone else.
Yeah. I think your subjects and stories often come from a personal experience, whether it's substitute mother or something that you've seen or learnt about, and it feels very personal, even if it's not necessarily happening directly to you. How does your own experience of the world influence your photography, do you think?
I was born and raised in Mexico City. And even though I am a brown woman, I was a woman who was able to go to university. I also had the chance to learn other language while I was in university, even though it's a public Mexican university. So I do understand that I had other opportunities because I'm a woman from the city. But still, I am also very open to learn from others. And one of the things that I love the most about being a photographer and being in the field with other communities and with different populations to people that I work and relate in the city is that I love how different realities can actually impress me. And one of the things that I always repeat myself is that it doesn't matter how many years I have in this profession, whatever I'm doing has to impress me. And has to make me realize how ignorant I am from the place that I come from. Because one of the things that the city is always a fiction in terms of cultural reality. Because the city makes you believe that you are like better than someone else because you are located in the heart of the progress and modernity and education, and that's a lie. The only thing that big cities has made for people is made us like more poor, not only in the economic situation, but also in terms of time. And also living in a big city makes you realize that you are eating junk food because you don't have any time to cook, or because that's the only food that it's available in the place that you live in. The quality of life in big cities is wrong. So once you understand that, once I understood that, I realized that other realities were better than mine, and that I was very ignorant in those realities, and that I needed to learn a lot and to understand a lot those realities in order to be very faithful to the stories that I'm telling. So that is something that I always keep in mind. I'm all the time reminding myself that, again, I am not a superhero. I am not this super powerful person who knows everything. I do not know anything when I get in the field. And I need to be amazed of what my eyes are looking at, and I need to be very impressed of what I'm learning, so that can be shown in my pictures, and so that can be shown in the story that I'm telling.
Yeah. I think this could be a perfect time to look at some of your photographs. We have a segment called Unframed. I've asked you to send some images which I have no context or know anything about, and I'm just going to describe it, and then you can give me what the story actually is. So this first image is of a crop field. It looks like there's a woman in the center of the photo, a lot of greenery around her. She's wearing actually really beautifully bright colors, so stands out in this bright environment already. She stands out. She's got her back to the camera and almost walking into this sea of greenery. What's the story behind this photo?
Well, this is a photo that belongs to a project that I have that is called Gardens of Chaos. And it's a documentary project that I started at the end of 2022, where I'm documenting small farmers in Mexico, peasant families that are actually caring for native maize seeds in Mexico. So maybe you or the audience already know that maize was domesticated in Mexico. We have more than 56 different species of different types of maize in all the colors that you can imagine. And maize is not only yellow or white. We have red, we have purple, we have pink. We have a lot of different seeds locally in Mexico that are native from our territories. And I started documenting how peasant families, small farmers around Mexico City are caring for these seeds each year, cycle to cycle, but also the challenges that they are facing because of climate change. So again, I am a woman from the city, and I have never, ever in my life have seen how food grows.
Yeah.
Never. I mean, I had an idea because I saw something when I was in school, and also when I was a little girl. Sometimes my mom or my dad will take me outside the city, and I will be like looking, for example, to a maize crop, you know? So when after reading all the books, doing a lot of interviews, I got in the field with the peasant families. And this picture in particular amazed me so much when I got there, because this is in the rainy season. This is around September in Mexico City, outside of Mexico City. And I remember getting in the field and being so amazed of everything that was happening there, because just so you can get an idea, this is not only a crop, this is an agrosystem that is called milpa, which is actually an ancestral and traditional method of doing agriculture, not only in Mexico, but in all the Mesoamerican region, for example, also in Central America, that has been done since pre-Hispanic times. This means that before the colony, people in this region of the world were doing milpa in order to feed themselves. So what happens with the milpa is that this is not monocrop. Just in this picture, you can see around 20 different species that are growing there that are food. Wow. So the hope in my storytelling about this project is that we as people around the world can actually start facing climate change by doing milpa. You know, because even though climate can be very unpredictable in terms of a lot of rain, or maybe a drought, or maybe, I don't know, like the weather is too hot or is not raining enough, by doing milpa, peasant families are actually able to feed themselves without buying food from corporations. And without buying food that is not local and that is not culturally appropriate to the diet that we locally have in each country or in each different region of the world. And I also wanted to show in this particular picture, but also that this is something that is very core from the storytelling in the project, is that this ancestral and traditional method has to be done by hand. there is no way, for example, if you look at this picture in the milpas, there is no way that you can get in with machinery.
No, yeah.
You know, because otherwise the crop will be destroyed. So again, going back to the main purposes of my work, I want to educate people in big cities that this is the right way to grow food. And that is why corporations are not doing it, because corporations want to sell food as a profit and as a commodity and not as a human right for people. So corporations want to get machinery in here. They want to do a lot of monocrop with seeds that have been already modified in the lab, you know, with certain pesticides that are also making us sick. So there is a lot of things that cross in this picture that gives me a lot of material to start telling people on how we need to be more aware of what are we eating, where are we buying our food, why we are not buying food from small farmers in local markets in Mexico. There is a lot of initiatives around the city of farmers markets when you can find them and directly buy their products from them instead of going to the supermarket to buy food that comes from you don't know where, and that there is a high percentage of possibilities that they've been using a lot of pesticides. I mean, there is a lot of new investigations that have put in the map that because of the high use of pesticides, the rates of cancer around the world has been increasing. You know, there is a lot of evidence that is showing that already. And even though that happens, governments are not doing enough in order to protect our health and also our population from all these products that are just making us sick.
Yeah. It's incredible what can kind of be unpicked just from one single photograph, which is why I love to see it without context or understanding deeper than just what I can see in front of me. Incredible story. The second image I wanted to move on to is really quite beautiful. It's incredible. Hard, in a way, kind of hard to explain because it's slightly abstract in a sort of strange way. It's a very sort of rough wall background, but this pop of really beautiful blue in the wall in the background. And in the center, you have, I don't know if they're mother and daughter relationship. I don't know anything about them, but it's a very caregiving situation, an older woman and a younger girl embracing. And then these braids with bright pink and incredibly long braids sort of scattered on the floor around them from the young girl's head. What's the story behind this photograph?
Well, I'm very happy to hear. Well, thank you for describing it so beautifully.
Hard to describe, actually, because it is a little bit abstract in a weird way.
Yeah. So this photograph belongs to the series Caring in the Absent, which is actually the second chapter of Substitute Mother. So as I said before, I've been working with other families in different parts of Mexico. So this is the story of Beatriz, who is Wendy's aunt. And Beatriz started taking care of Wendy when her mom was a victim of feminicide as well. And when that happened, Wendy had 3 years old also. And the thing is that this is a very, well, in this project, I'm working very differently from what I did with my family, because that first chapter, for example, well, just so you can get an idea that it's a very different work. That chapter is in black and white. And this second chapter is all about color, and specifically color pink. Pink has been my reference and my guide for telling this the story of these families. So when I was conceptualizing how was I going to develop the second chapter, I was reading a lot. I was doing a lot of research. I was interviewing a lot of feminist activists and also feminist organizations and feminist academics because I wanted to understand the root and the causes of gender violence in Mexico, the causes of feminicide in Mexico, and also how gender violence is also shaping Mexican society, contemporary society, in terms of how we as women live with this like message all the time that your destiny might be this one, you know?
Yeah.
So after breaking my head thinking, how can I tell this story? Because one of the things that I realized is that I was not going to be able to spend so many time with each and one of these families as I spend with my family. So one of the things that I had very clear is that I needed to do it completely different. So after thinking, I got to the point that I started researching symbols of violence in Mexico. And one of the biggest and most important symbols in terms of gender violence, and specifically to talk about feminicide in Mexico, are pink crosses that the families of murdered women use, for example, in demonstrations outside police stations, or also in women's marches. If you see someone with a pink cross, you know that person has something to do with a victim of feminicide, because it's a symbol of feminicide across the country. And the first crosses that came in Mexico were located in the north part of the country, in a city called Ciudad Juárez, because back in the 90s, there was a feminicide crisis in Ciudad Juárez. It was a very, very strong problem over there in the northern border with the U.S. So the first crosses that were planted in the country were in Ciudad Juárez almost 30 years ago. So I realized and I decided that these pink crosses were to be my guide in order to tell the story of these families. So the color pink is like a symbol also in this storytelling, but I also realized that I wanted to use an aesthetic of tenderness with the story, because even though it's a story that comes from violence, I didn't want it to replicate this violence.
Yeah.
Because again, as I was telling before, these women are not only victims. And these children also deserve to have a storytelling that dignifies what they are as a family, and also that dignifies the memory of the women of our family that has been killed. So what we are seeing here is an image that I created in my mind when I was interviewing Beatriz, because what I've done, the way that I've developed this project is that I worked very closely with a psychologist who uses a trauma-informed approach to develop a methodology for me to go back and interview the families. So after the interview that I did with Beatriz, she was sharing with me that when Wendy was very little, and when she started missing her mom a lot, and when she started feeling very sad, because you have to take in mind that these are little children that do not know how to express their feelings. They do not know if they feel sad, if they feel angry, if they feel frustrated. Sometimes they get sick very often because, you know, they just feel bad. So whenever Wendy were feeling sad and missing her mom, she used to ask Beatriz to comb her hair. And she used to tell her, "Mom, can you comb my hair? Can you do some braids in my hair?" So that was a way that Betty realizes that Wendy was sad. So when she told me that, I started imagining this picture because I wanted to show how these women are doing everything to take care of these children. And also another thing that happens a lot, that crosses a lot in these stories, is that these children are being bullied in schools. Sometimes the bully comes from the teachers, because they start pointing them that you don't have a mom because your mom was killed. That it's brutal to realize that. But again, if my projects want to educate people, I also want to raise awareness about this, that public schools are not doing anything either to protect these children, and that sometimes teachers are the one leading the bully, the bully against these children. So because of that, Beatriz once told me that she used to feel so bad for Wendy that even though she was very big, she was still carrying her whenever she was picking her from school. So I wanted to do like a mix of Beatriz carrying her and also Wendy asking Beatriz to comb her hair with this picture. So after creating a dialogue with them on what I was imagining and also if they felt comfortable with this, we came with this portrait and we prepare all the stage with, I mean, we spend a lot of time doing the braids and finding the materials and also the clothing so they can, so we can have this final result. And also like, I really want to share a lot the behind the scenes of this picture in particular, because one of the things that I've also intended with these families in this storytelling is to create a safe space of having fun while we are doing the pictures. Because I know, and they know, that this is a very, very brutal thing that happened to all of us as families. I mean, we understand that we are here telling this story because something very terrible happened to all of us. And we are also like recovering this space as a space of hope, as a space of joy, as a space of reminding us that we also deserve and have the right to be happy. And we also deserve and have the right to remember the women in our family in a very joyful way and in a very tender way to think about them. So we try to create this space where we are all having fun and laughing and enjoying the moment, because the way I see it, unfortunately, nowadays the rates of impunity in Mexico are so high that one of the reflections that I've had in the past few years by working in this project is that art, photography, and the work that I'm doing by telling this story is also giving us a space of restorative justice. Because art can also be healing, not only for them, but also for myself as a photographer, because the stories that I'm telling are so brutal, are so violent, and are so strong that we need to find the way to, you know, like remind us that we are alive and that we deserve to have different realities.
It's an incredible photo, and actually both those photographs, there's a stillness, a beauty in both of them, very different subject matter, but obviously equally as important stories to tell. I just want to focus on some of your accolades. Your work has been published in the New York Times, The Guardian. You've worked on collaborative projects with UN offices, civil society organizations. What does it mean to you for your work to be recognized by these organizations, but also to work with them?
For me, it has been very important, especially because these are things that I believe in. You know, again, by one of the things that I have very clear with my work and with the stories that I like to tell is that I have the chance to create a difference with the images that I'm doing, and also with the language that I'm using, with the visual language that I've developed within the years. So I feel very honored to have been, to have the opportunity to collaborate with these organizations, because this is actually a way of earning a life by doing the thing that I love the most, which is photography, but also by having the opportunity of, again, create a different narrative from what we've been told that we are as women, as indigenous communities, as Mexican communities, as Hispanic communities. You know, it's a chance to tell the story from a different perspective. And I feel very honored that those organizations choose me and the language that I've developed in order to also amplify the message that they want to give to the people that follow their work.
You work primarily in the photojournalism genre, let's say. Are there any other areas of photography you also enjoy or spend time in?
Yes, and actually, I was speaking with my women colleagues yesterday during breakfast that a couple of years ago, I realized that the projects that I do are, well, first of all, they are long-term projects, and I'm a very intense woman, so it takes me a lot of years to do this research and to go in the field. And also between work and personal projects, you're always navigating between having time and spending time with them, and then coming back, and then not being able to go back in another 3, 4, 6 months. So it's, I mean, the rhythm is always a challenge. But in between that, and also being a journalist and doing all this in-deep research and all this fact-checking, and always being like, so a lot of like this very tight methodology. So the work that you do is ethically important. And I started questioning myself that even though I love what I do and I feel very passionate about it, the reality is that I came to photography because I just love doing photographs. And I started questioning myself if doing this in-depth research was the only way I could enjoy doing photography, you know? And even though I love what I've done in the past few years, I also wanted to reconnect with photography in a completely different way. And I also wanted to do photography just because I love it, and just because I saw like a beautiful sunset or some flowers in the road. So I started a completely different project that is just about me running. Because I'm a runner. So I've been working in this project for 1.5 years. So every time that I travel, I go out for a run in a city that I don't know, and I take an analog camera with me, and I'm documenting what I'm looking at just in a morning run, you know? So I think that this project has made me realize how much I love photography. I mean, not realize, but remembering how much I love photography, and how much I love being amazed with whatever comes in the way. And reminding me that the stories that I tell are very important, and I'm very convinced that my work can change something if I use it in the right way, and if I create the right methodologies and the right ways to show this work. But at the same time, I also love what I do just because, you know? So I've been playing with that.
So interesting. Where did your journey with Leica start? And you know, documenting and all of that kind of stuff. Obviously, your camera is in some ways the vessel that allows you to tell those stories, aside from your writing and that side of journalism. But yeah, I'm really interested to hear how you came to Leica and where that all happened.
Well, actually, I became a part of the Leica family since I got the Leica Women for a Project in 2023 with this project Substitute Mother. Actually, that was the project that I entered to this grant. And since then, when actually I got an SL2 with my grant, and that's my main camera. That's the camera that I use for work most of the time. And I got this cue maybe 1.5 years ago. And this is actually my travel camera. You know, like this is the camera that I take with me during the weekends, when I go out with my friends, when I'm traveling as well, because I wanted also to have something lighter. And I don't know if I mean, it will be very interesting to talk with other photographers about this, but I think that also the camera that I'm using creates like a different connection with the photography that I'm taking and with the things that I'm looking at. So in my mind, which is maybe something completely ridiculous, but in my mind, when I have my cue with me, I'm just having fun. You know, I'm just enjoying the moment and, you know, like giving myself to whatever happens during the day or when I'm out. And I really, really enjoy it, have it with me, because I'm just experimenting things, you know.
And it's nice actually, because you were talking about this running project and that side of things, having the enjoyment from photography just in its essence, in its purest form, to just take photographs is such a beautiful thing as well. So exciting, more projects, different projects, personal projects.
Yeah.
I love it. I wanted to ask you a little bit before we, come to the end of the questions. Do you think that there are some stories that can only be documented and told by female photographers?
That's a tough question. Because the reality is that, it's not that I believe that they can only be documented from women photographers, but I do believe that they will be documented in a different way.
Yeah, I love that.
I do believe that, because the way I see it, everyone can do whatever they want. But history will come and tell them. No, the thing is that I do believe, this is also a very interesting question, because I do not believe that because we are women, we see the world in a different way. I do not believe that. Because we as women are also taught by images, and images create culture. And the culture we live in is the culture we see every day. So it is very interesting, because if we read, for example, feminist art historians, what they say in their articles, in their essays, is that when women started doing art, they didn't necessarily represent different things, because they were taught to do art as male were doing art. We as photographers, if the only teachers that you have were men, there is a big chance that you will start looking like they do.
Yeah.
And that you will start seeing the world as they've been seeing the world. That is why, for example, a very well-known Mexican feminist researcher that it's called Eli Bartra has been studying a lot like naked women in the history of art. And it is very interesting when you start looking on how women represent themselves naked, for example. And one of the things that we start doing immediately is posing. We can all do the exercise at home in our privacy. Like when you look at yourself in the mirror and you want to take a picture of you, you start like doing you start moving like, because the images that we've seen in our lives of naked women are perfect images, where women are always doing poses in order to please the men gaze, in order to please men in particular. So whenever women photographers start doing self-portraits naked, it's very interesting how they are also replicating these poses and how they are replicating ways of showing their body in ways that we do not normally do. That's what I was saying at the beginning. When I see those pictures, I do not act like that. It's not that we are sitting like this all the time. We're just sitting and that's it. So behavior is also shaped by the visual culture that we have, that we are absorbing all the time. So going back to the question, what I do believe is that we as women photographers, by creating the work we are creating and by creating the art we are creating right now, if we are conscious on how the image can impact a society, we have the opportunity to rewrite women's history. We have the opportunity of creating different languages, but also creating different destinies for all of us on what do we want to tell, how do we want to be represented, and what's the message that we want to give to other women when they look at our pictures.
Amazing. I think I could talk to you for another 2 hours. I wish we had it. what we typically do by ending the episode is asking you some quickfire questions, but totally understand if it's not a quick answer that comes to your head, so don't worry if that's the case. So I'll move into them, and this is a much sort of, I guess, lighter part, but some things to think about, I think. So the first question: from today onwards, you can only shoot with one aperture. What would it be?
Oh my God. Only one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You can also pass if it's too hard to answer.
Yeah. Because I'm always everywhere, and the light and everything is like, I don't know. I will be crying.
Don't want that to be a reality. I get it. If your camera could talk, what would it say about you?
Wow. I think she will be hugging me and telling me it's okay, you will pass.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Which photograph of yours changed the way you see photography?
It's a photograph that I have from the Urban Midwives project. And it's actually a picture of a woman with her legs open, giving birth. And the frame that I have is the head of her baby literally coming out. And when I saw that picture, I mean, when I saw the image, I mean, in reality, I was so amazed that I have never, ever seen that in my life. And it actually made me realize how important the story I was telling was for women realities in my country. Because, I mean, if you realize how many people born every day, how many children born every day, and if I ask you the question straightforward, Louise, have you ever seen a woman giving birth? I mean, even in a movie,
Yeah.
I mean, like actual birth, a baby coming out of a woman's vagina. Have you ever seen that?
Right
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
I don't think so. I mean,
Which is ridiculous.
it's crazy.
Because it happens every second.
I mean, obviously from seeing your photographs now I have.
But it's
yeah.
ridiculous
Yeah.
because it happens every second.
Yeah.
You know, and that made me realize how there are some parts in history of women that hasn't been told,
Yeah.
that we do not know about. And that's why it is important. Again, rewriting history for us.
Yeah.
So that picture just changed completely the way I was seeing a lot of things in photography.
Yeah. Incredible photograph, actually. If you could go back to the first time you picked up a camera, what would you tell yourself?
To believe in myself. To believe in myself, and also to... Oh, you're going to make me cry.
We can ask again if you want.
That what I was doing is important.
It is, yeah. So you should feel that strongly. What I want to ask you at the end, on a lighter note, on you know, it could be future generation, it could be now, is someone that you want to draw attention to in the world of photography, a photographer that you want to highlight who is important to you, resonates with you, or just you think deserves more attention?
Wow.
It's a big question because there are so many, and I get that.
And so many women photographers.
Yeah.
But I have to say that it is a photographer that is still alive. And she's actually my colleague in one of the most important projects that I've ever started as a feminist photographer. And her name is Carol Espíndola. She's a Mexican artist, a Mexican photographer. And Carol and I have, we started a project, like a collective photography project that is called Rosa Chillante, which is a feminist photography lab.
Wow.
And not necessarily a lab like a darkroom lab, but like a platform where we are educating other women photographers in the art of doing feminist photography. And the bond and the relationship that I've created with Carol actually begin from realizing how much we admire each other.
Yeah.
And that I think that's very genuine, and that has been like a symbol from the project that we started together. And one of the most ambitious projects that we also started together as a daughter of Rosa Chillante is an initiative that we started last year, while we think on what about if we create the very first archive of feminist photography in Mexico. Because some of the discussions that Carol and I were having in the past few years is on how the history of photography has a lot of gaps, and especially and particularly how the history of photography is not telling women's stories and is not showing the work of women artists. So we realized that the archives in Mexico, I mean, this actually happens all around the world, but in Mexico, there is like a huge gender gap in terms of how many women are part of the art collections in Mexico. So what we think is that it was important for us to start an archive of women photographers, feminist photographers, so we can start doing donations to the archives in order to contribute to the contemporary history of art, to take very seriously the work that these women are doing, but also to introduce these women in the history of art in Mexico, so we can also contribute to reduce those gender gaps in the art archives in our country. So last year we did an open call for all Mexican women photographers to submit their work. We named a very important jury to do the selection, and we ended up donating 25 pieces of fine prints to the National Mexican Photography Archive, So we've been doing these efforts of, again, rewriting history, because we are also convinced that no one will come and give us, you know what, I've realized that this is happening, because we need to start pushing the efforts, and we need to start organizing ourselves in order to make this happen. So we are very, very happy with the reception that the project has been having in Mexico, and we are also thinking on new ways of keep contributing to the history of art in our country, and also maybe in some other places.
Completely fascinating. Greta, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and talking to me. I've had such an interesting time. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank everyone who's watching.